About you open your Bibles, please, to Joshua the 7th chapter. We come to the latter part of that chapter, and we think that Achan's sin was found out. And we just ask the question, how does the name Valley of Achor relate to God's promise in chapter 6 and verse 18? Notice when he commanded them what they were to do and to march around the city and so forth, as many times as he commands, and then the trumpet blows and they take the city. He says also, but as for you, only keep yourselves from the devoted thing. Here's the thing that's accursed, or something that belongs only to God, the devoted thing. And the point is that here was something that this whole city was devoted unto him, so they were not to take the spoils of the city. Keep yourself from the devoted thing. That's when you devoted it, you take the devoted thing and you would make the camp of Israel accursed and trouble it. So you'd be accursed and trouble it. So what happens? Achan sees the beautiful garments, Egyptian garments, Babylonian garments. He sees the gold. He sees the idea of money and of value. And he takes that thing and hides it from men, thinking he could get away with it with God. But the point is he can't. We've already seen in our last few questions that indeed who found out the guilty party on this one is God. He calls them by family and the tribe family and get down to Achan. So here's the punishment that is done. But this is what God had warned them about. And so we see, how does that relate to the Valley of Achor? How does it do that? It's what the meaning of it is, troubling. So it's a Valley of Achor. Achor means troubling. That's right. So there's the sense of that's what. So who got the trouble? Who received the trouble? The penalty of trouble. Yeah, the soldiers that died there trying to take I, and the family. This is children. Seem to be the ones that were also stoned. Seems like the way to me. His family is affected by this. In verse 25, why hast thou troubled us? And Jehovah shall trouble thee this day. That's why I'm saying it's upon his family. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and they burned them. Stoned him, burned them with fire, and stoned them with stones. And then when that's done, they raised over them a great heap of stones unto this day. And Jehovah turned from the fierceness of his anger. Wherefore the name of the place was called the Valley of Achor, Valley of Troubling, unto this very day, as chapter 7 ends. So the consequences of sin are very difficult to deal with. But your sin will find you out. And it's sure God was full of wrath. And he's the one that helps them know this was the trouble. And this is what caused the 36 men to die. And when you tried to take Ai, and there's a sense of why couldn't we do that? We just took what city? We took Jericho with its strong walls. Jericho wasn't that big of a city, but it had strong walls. There's a reason why smaller cities and strong walls were present during that time. But there was a sense of what Jericho was to them, and we took that one. But here's this little place called Ai, and we had trouble there. And this is the trouble. It's because of sin. And God wants a holy people following him, and he still wants that today. But that's a great lesson we can learn from that. Question now, what was different in God's instruction concerning the spoil of the city of Ai, and that regarding the spoil of Jericho? So now we see they're going to indeed be involved in coming back after the punishment is given, but there's going to be a difference. And what did you see there as a difference that's going to take place? They got to keep for themselves. Where do you find that? For you, that you're not going to be like it was in Jericho. You're going to be able to keep the only spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall you take for a prey. You weren't to take anything to spoil from Jericho, because that city belonged to me, is what God's saying. It's devoted to me. You can take this, say, of Ai, you take that one, and you'll take the cattle. That will be spoil for yourselves, as he sets forth the ambush of the city. So there's that sense of what's devoted unto God. You don't take that. Well, what he did, he took a silver, gold that was supposed to be put into the treasury of God, killed everything else, and they burned the city. And that's what we're going to find that's going to happen to this town. So there was a difference. So when you talk about the devoted thing, this was spoil that's not going to belong to you. This is devoted unto me. And so there's a sacrifice to the city, all that was in it. And we find Achan had to realize what was in it. Well, my children and all my possessions, and they were stoned to death, and stones were heaped up on top of that. That's what we're going to see also, and I as well. Any comments on that? Yes?
This goes along with a lot of the concepts we see in these, well, throughout all the Bible, but the first fruit was given to God. And so that was always dedicated. So here in Jericho, when they conquered it, it was that first one that was devoted to God. A lot of times nowadays, we kind of give God leftover.
Yeah.
But there in the Bible, you give your first of your crops, you give the first of, you give them your best. That was devoted to God, and that's what we see here.
That's right. I think very much involved in that. And this is the first city they're going to take as they come in to take the whole land. And remember, we've seen the strategy of coming in, and there's the central invasion. That's Jericho. You got Ai, Bethel, all those places. But Ai and Jericho, they're in the center. They'll head south to take care of that campaign, and then they'll head north to finish it up. And this is their entrance into there. And so that first place, it's voted unto me. The first, call it, I guess, first fruits of what God said. And God picked Jericho, and he sent them there to take that city. It has very strong walls, and it was, we'll see just about what kind of walls that they were in just a moment. But there's a sense of that's and you had to walk around that city once every day, and you had to look at those high walls. As you'll see, from the very bottom where they were walking, they would be looking up 48 feet. This is 50 feet up here. When you look at the top of the ceiling, and you're walking around and you see walls that high. That's how high they were. And you think, I don't know if we can take this or not. One time around, it wasn't the fact that the city, it was less than a half a mile. It was like 2,000 feet. It's less than a half a mile, you could walk it in 30 minutes. We sometimes don't think that. How long did it take to go around the walls of Jericho? It was only 6 acres. Only 6 acres. But its walls were massive. And that to me is a sense of, here, God picked this one. It was an entrance into Canaan. It was a very important city. As far as traffic was concerned, Jericho, it's one of the most oldest cities in the world. 6,000 to 10,000 years. It's had an habitation. There have been times when they didn't have anybody there, but there's times when that was the case. And so here's the one that God said, we're going to take that one. And just thinking about marching around, it would test your faith. This is Tuesday, and this is Wednesday. And then how many times they march around it on the seventh day? They go 7 times. Totally 13 times around that city. You've been to the south, and you've been to the west, you've been to the east and north and all that, and you still think you can take it? Walls of Jericho fell down by faith after they were encompassed 7 days. They went around it as God had commanded them. They shouted at the right time. And the walls came what? We've got the word tumbling. The walls came tumbling down. And we'll talk about that. So there's a sense of that devoted unto God and really setting forth. It really tries to test your faith, how big that is, how massive that is. And that becomes very important. Whose strategy proved successful in taking the city of Ai? They first thought they'd just go take it, but now there's a strategy taking place, and it was God's and leading Joshua. And we'll find in chapter 8, so Joshua rose and all the people of war to go up to Ai, and Joshua chose out how many men? 30,000 men are going to be fighting in this battle. You're going to be encamped on the north side of Ai toward the Jordan River. And the topography of that area is very important to understand what happens here at Ai. Where is the mountain of ambush where they're going to send 5,000 men? Didn't send 30,000. They sent 5,000 men to the west, beyond the west part of the city of Ai. So you're coming from the northeast. You've got the wilderness area to the southeast, and that's where the children of Israel are going to flee. All the people going to flee. You got all the people encamped in that north camp. There's a big valley between the two and the city of Jericho. So the king, the ruler, could sit there and see the next morning here's this great assembly of God's people there. Now, this is not Jericho. All the children of Israel didn't march around Jericho. They were encamped there, but that's men, the priests and the elders, and they're the ones that went around the city. Sometimes we think that all the people did. And it took so much long time. You can walk in 30 minutes. It wasn't that long of a time. But there's the sense that there's the topography of valleys. So where was, you got Ai, and Bethel was to the north or to the west or to the south of Ai. Genesis 12:7-8 tell you exactly where Ai and Bethel were kept. Bethel was to the west. Ai is to the east. That's where archaeologists have said, well, we found pretty sure about Bethel. Are we sure we're going to find Ai, which is going to be Etel? That's what Ai is. There's an argument about that. But there's a sense that those are the two places that are very near. But so they just head east and they find the Etel, which they think is Ai. And they've looked upon it and excavated that city as Ai, or Ai. And there's the difference. Well, Bethel is to the west. So you're going to have an ambush between Ai and Bethel? And you think it's going to be an ambush? Because who do we know leaves Bethel to come fight with Ai, with people of Ai? Bethel and Ai, all the men had left. They came from the west. How come they didn't see the people encamped on the west, the soldiers? Because there was a great valleys and mountains and hills, and the topography of what they recognize as present day Ai is the fact that Ai couldn't see over this mountain ridge. You could hide there, and Bethel couldn't either. Bethel couldn't either. The range was there, and they could hide in that other side of that mountain in the valley. And so here comes Bethel's guys, and here coming to aid Ai the next day, and we'll find that they're all going to go, and they're going to go down to the southeast, and all the people are running away afraid, as if you got us. And then when the long spearhead, you look back at the times in which those spears were made, Joshua had a spearhead. It's very slender, metal. You can see he would wave it. That's when you go in and take the city. And they burned it immediately. They burned it immediately and destroyed that. See, they took the things out of that, but they were involved in destroying it like God would have them to do. That was the strategy. It was ambush. Did it work? Yes, it worked. They killed everybody. Because what happened when they saw the city burning with fire, and they could see over the hill the fire coming out. They will go back, and there you've got the people have ambushed them. They've already come out of the city. They just met them, and they destroyed everybody. They destroyed everybody of Ai. And that was the strategy of war, and that proves very successful. So Joshua sent them forth, and he went in verse 9, the ambushment and bow between Bethel and Ai. Bethel and Ai. Well, I read that and said, no, that's not very good. Not a very good strategy. Because Bethel's going to come out and fight, and they will. But they could hide. And that's the topography is interesting to study about that area. That's still we can observe that. And Joshua rose up early in the morning and mustered the people, and they went up, he and the elders in Israel, before the people to Ai. And all the people, even the men of war that were with him, went up and drew nigh, and came before the city, and encamped on the north side of Ai. And there was a valley between him and Ai. And he took about 5,000 men and sent them ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the city. So they set the people above all the host that was in the north of the city, and their liers in wait that were in the west of the city. And Joshua went that night and into the midst of the valley. And it came to pass, when the king of Ai saw it, that they hasted and rose up early, and the men of the city went out against Israel to battle. Let's go beat them up again. We won the first time. I could just see them going. And all of his people, and at the same appointed time before the Arabah, that's going to the southeast, that's going back toward the Jordan River. But he knew not that there was an ambush against him behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel made as they were beaten before them. And they fled the way of the wilderness, that's toward the Jordan. And all the people that were in the city were called together to pursue after them. And they pursued after Joshua and were drawn away from the city. And there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel that went not out after the Israel, and they left the city open and pursued after Israel. And Jehovah said unto Joshua, stretch out the javelin that is in thy hand toward Ai, and I will give it into thy hand. And Joshua stretched out the javelin, something you could see, because they're on the mountainside, mountains, hills, and valleys. And Joshua stretched out his javelin, and it was on the hand toward the city, and the ambush rose quickly out of their place. And they ran as soon as he had stretched out his hand, and entered into the city and took it. And they hasted and set the city on fire. Quickly set it on fire. And that's what we have taking place. So there's the strategy, and this time God has punished the unholiness of his people. And he gave a great lesson. This is why you couldn't take the city, because of sin. And now that's been paid. Now we see how God is with them to conquer the people. How many fighting men fought and took Ai? Question number, verse 3, how many we have? Not how many were on the ambush side. And the ambush wasn't made up of 30,000 men. About 5,000, he sends. 30,000 was all the men of valor, fighting men. So I think there's 30,000 there. What say you? Question number 12. About 12,000 men of Ai were put to death by Israel. Is that true or false? It's false. That's women too. Is it not? What does the Bible say? All that fell today, both of men and, were women in the force? They weren't just men. Men were 12,000. Even all the men of Ai, that means the whole population, even all the men, but in that 12,000 there were women that died that day too. And for Joshua drew not back his hand wherein he stretched out the javelin until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants. No women? Yes, women. Of Ai. Only the cattle and the spoil of that city Israel took for a prey unto themselves, according to the word of Jehovah, which he commanded Joshua. So Joshua burnt Ai and made it a heap forever, even a desolation unto this day. And so we now look at question 13. What did Israel do to the king of Ai? He's not dead yet, but they bring him to whom? They're going to bring the king to Ai, the king to Joshua, and the king of Ai, he hang on a tree until eventide. So, and until the going down of the sun, Joshua commanded. Deuteronomy said you're not supposed to leave it there because of God doesn't want that. Pollutes the ground and the city and the countryside. And he took his body down from the tree and cast it at the entrance of the gate of the city, and raised there in a great heap of stones unto this day. So what they did, they brought, he says, so Joshua burnt Ai and made it a heap forever, even a desolation of this day, and the king of Ai hanged on a tree. So the body is usually dead already. His body is hanging on a tree until sundown. And they bring it down. Cursed is he that hangs on a tree. That's on the pole. They were indeed doing that. And so Joshua had him killed, hang him on a pole to the sundown, and then bring the body down, going down the sun. They took his body, not him. They took his body down from the tree and cast it at the entrance of the gate of the city and raised there a great heap of stones. Just like Ai, it's like to this day, this is unto this day that he did that. And the entrance of the gate of the city is where they involved in taking him. Now, I read a lot of this because this is history. It's God's word. But if you're going to think about what do archaeologists say and what does the Bible say, where are you going to start? I mean, I believe the Bible is inspired of God, and all the scriptures are. But you're going to begin to see, and as we get into our time of a world, that this is just all fantasy. This is not history. Jericho's not history. What happened there, and Ai is not history. Even those who believe in Joshua, they are thinking that the reason that the people crossed the Jordan River at flood stage was because there was an earthquake. And it happens about every 100 years there. It's very true. 1927, I think is the last time that happened, and it dammed up around the city of Adam. We talked about that, and that's how the people could get across. It dammed it up about 12 hours that day. And how did the walls of Jericho fall down? Earthquake. That's among Bible believers today. That's among their teaching in religious schools. Everything, and the miracle was the timing of things. So an earthquake takes place. And you begin to think, well, earthquake, rocks will go all sorts of ways. Is that what we see as the evidence of Jericho? We're not into a history lesson of saying, well, I just don't know which way did they go. We're going to look at what the Bible says. But I want you to know there's people now, you go look at Jericho and you go on a tour there, they completely eliminated the idea that this was indeed connected with Israel following God. I quote, "The town was destroyed in the late Bronze Age, 14th century BC. And the city of Jericho was Joshua's invasion fantasy, they call it, was not found by archaeologists. Thus is unduly a contradiction. The believer in the Bible narrative not to believe that indeed this is just fiction." That's the tour you'll take, and that's the reading you'll get. It's on the boards. It's controlled by the people and the Palestinians, and they don't want Israel to have anything connected with God. So that's the narrative today. That indeed the Bible and archaeologists have disproved that indeed this ever occurred. In fact, it could not have occurred. Archaeologists have said there was no population at this time in 1406 BC with Jericho. And it had already been destroyed 150 years earlier. And that's the various archaeologists have been through there. And so there's a battle taking place, whether you know it or not, and they've already won it. It's the modern archaeologists and their superior knowledge. They're the ones that have disproved it. But it's not because of the evidence they found, it's because what they were expecting to take place there, they couldn't find. So they ignored what they did find. And we'll see that indeed takes place with one of the ladies that was very instrumental. This happens you go back into the 1960s. That's when all this was occurring. When indeed we're going to find ways. You had Israel becoming a state as their political factions, and they began to the seminaries turned liberal, and you had the teachers there saying no, it wasn't a miracle, earthquake, and no, this is just a story. It really helps us in our faith, but it's just a story. It's not historically accurate. And I think we need to understand what is taking me. What is Jericho? When you go back down, and there's been three different distinctive, at least three, of excavations of Jericho over time. And you had some in the 1800s, but you get the Germans are involved in the 1900s, in which they were involved in discovering things. And then you had such ladies as Kathleen Kenyon. She's the one I'm talking about, 52 to 58, so you're leading into the 60s. She's the one that said, no, what John Garstang had done, he had been there in the 1930s. And he saw everything fit the biblical narrative of what we see in Joshua 6 and what we've been reading through chapter 8. 32 to 36, there was no doubt about it, that indeed the evidence showed that indeed here was something that you don't find everywhere, that you find the walls of a city had collapsed. A lot of times you think, well, you find it all the time. No. And they begin to discover things. You'll notice in this area here, you find big holes in the middle of the screen, that trench there. That's what was involved in the work of Kenyon. I mean, her father was very famous himself. He was a religious man, but the Kathleen Kenyon, she wasn't necessarily a Christian. Member of the Church of England, so she may have called herself a Christian. But the Bible was not something that she necessarily believed in as being historically accurate. So she was digging there, and notice how she slices into the city. It's kind of like you build these, you slice into it. That was new. That was a type of work that archaeologists did. It's kind of like we have a layered cake, and we just slice in it and we see the layers unfold. Of course, in studying geology, that's become that's just, naturally, that's what a geologist learns, and that's true. But you see different layers of things and what happened as time went on. Why are they called tells or hills? They stand up out of the plains around them because you've got cities. And what happens when a city was destroyed? What would they do? Let's build the city on top of that. And you'd have layers of generations. And Jericho has revealed 23 different generations in their findings. It's been a city, been around 6,000, 10,000 BC. And they have layers, and they begin to find pottery. Why would you care about pottery? It's a way of finding what age in which this city was at that level, because that's the type of style of pottery. Well, John Garstang, he was one of the leading men of just scholarly. In fact, his book is still recognized as chronological timing of looking at pottery. He was an expert. And Kenyon says he's wrong. It's not wrong because she found evidence. It's what she didn't find that says, therefore it's wrong. Is that a good argument? What did they find? Did they find any pottery? She found some but never studied it. And why is your mind bent on trying to avoid what you did find? Well, right, that's right. He found it, and he was expert. This 1400 BC stuff. She was looking for imported Cyprus pottery that indeed the rich would have, but she never dug in the poor part of Jericho. And what they did find when they looked at more diggings as time went on is they realized that indeed there was that copies. Canaanites had copied things of Cyprus, same type of style. And there were evidence that, and that's what Garstein said is it's 1400 BC. When you look at 1400, 1406, how do we know that was in the springtime in which this city was taken? We've studied this already. We was thinking about the scriptures. How do we know that was harvest time? Which would be, you got the waters of floods, of Jordan River flooding, and you got Flask hiding the men that came into Rahab's house. You got barley. You got fields with flash. There was that time of the springtime when those events were taking place. So, but they sliced it down. They looked at the layers, but you can come up with different interpretations. Archaeologists, that's why they battle one another. Jericho had two walls. It wasn't just one wall, but you'll notice that here we have a retaining wall, that lower lighter brown. Why do you have a retaining wall? Why do you have one today? You want to keep the dirt in one place, don't you? That retaining wall was, you're down here at the bottom, that's 12 to 15 high, that's just a retaining wall. Then they had with the bricks, that would have, then the brick wall, it would be inside or on the edge, it would be supported by the retaining wall, but that's where they would build up the next wall. It was 6 feet wide, and it would rise up, 15, 20 feet above that. Then they had an inward wall of the brick as well. Retaining wall, notice how it sloped up and down. So what happens when the walls came tumbling down? Did the retaining wall come down? That was supposed to hold things. What could have come down? The walls that are the brick takes place. So what would happen? You'd have the brick city wall, and then you have the retaining wall. And when the walls came tumbling down, how did they come down? What does the Bible say about what happened when they shouted and they took the city? Look at verse 20 of chapter 6. The wall fell down how? What does your translation say? Mine says flat. What does yours say? Everybody got flat? The Hebrew word denotes under you. Under you. Found out flat under your feet. Under you. And the people went up into the city, every man how? Straight before him, and they took the city. Where are those walls of the brick city wall, when they start tumbling down, which direction are they going, inward or outward? They fell down flat, and they would fill up that area here. And it would build a ramp where you could walk up into the city straight ahead of you, just like the Bible says. Thank you. And they were able to do that. It fell outward, and that's what we see in this second part. The collapse of the wall revealed by excavation. The wall there, the retaining wall, it's still intact. It's still intact. That's big of stone, but they found red brick. And they found it going back to falling outward. And during the days of Miss Kenyon and Grafstone, they all agree. This is Jericho. There's no doubt about it. This is the city. And this is exactly what happened. To Kathleen's credit, she even had the order in which things placed and said that was indeed true. But John Garstang, he excavated this in 3036. The reason I have this picture here is because now authorities have now covered all of that up. He found pottery, he found things, but all that excavation he did has been covered up because we're going to cover up the evidence. When you go to Jericho, you'll be running your cars over things like that, as if that's not important. But he has it on record. He wrote a book about that. One of the things, the barley was in Jericho. They found, as Garstang does, he finds that indeed there was burnt barley in a lot of pots that they found in those homes. Covered up now. They found the burnt barley. Why would they have burnt barley? You don't want to burn barley. You might want to eat it. Did they have time? Well, that was about a 5-year war. No? 7 days? And it's a time of the season where they would have their wheat and they have it stored. Why didn't you take that for your spoil? We weren't commanded to take it for spoil. We burned it. They have burnt barley in a lot of the pots. It was harvest season. It points us back to the flood stage, flax gatherings on Rahab's roof. All that fits in timing of this. From the evidence of this city was destroyed. The problem is you don't think it's the right time in history, but it happened. John Garstang is on the right. He'd been studying pottery for a long time and wrote the book on the chronological part of that. He worked on Jericho from 30 to 1936. And he was involved in 1928 excavating Ai. And realized that here indeed he found pottery there like he finds in Jericho later. He understood there's the timing of this thing. He found that indeed there was that type of pottery for that. And he says late Bronze Age, phase 1. And people before him, the Germans thought that too. But not the 1950s and 60s archaeologists. Why? I don't, there's maybe political reasons. But here's a type of pottery you found, and you could put those together, and he's been proven to be exactly right. There was Canaanite copies of the Cyprus imported pottery, which was more expensive. And when they started looking at Ai and other places around there, they found a lot. They found pottery in Jericho. Kenyon found it. She just didn't study it. It wasn't what she was looking for. So if I don't get what I'm looking for, it doesn't exist. What argument is that? Here's her, Kathleen Kenyon. She had a lot of great properties, and she at least recognizes things. She saw the sequence of destruction. The walls fell down flat in its place beneath you, Joshua 6:20. But it fell down first before it was burnt. It fell down first before it's burnt. She could look at the levels and realize what came first. And it wasn't they were burnt and then the walls fell down. The walls fell down, it was burnt, and then there's a place where no life is in that particular section of what she took her little cake and she learned. So that means after this there wasn't anybody there. In fact, they wouldn't be there for another 500 years because the Bible teaches us. We've already studied it. There was an oath given by Joshua. Who tries to restore Joshua, what's going to happen? Your firstborn's going to die, and when you up the gate, the youngest is going to die. And that happened 500 years later in the days of Elijah and Ahab. Well, that's about as long a time as you're looking at. It was deserted for a time. She says, see, Jericho was destroyed in 1500 BC, and there was no life after that, even up to 1200 BC. And therefore, this is a fairy tale. Thank you. It's a fairy tale. Not necessarily so. And I appreciate there's young archaeologists now saying, hey, that's not basis. We've already found that there's deep pottery there. And if Garstang is the one that said they were bronze timing of it, phase 1, 1400, we believe him. He has all the credentials for that. And that's what we find. Here's AI now, and very quickly, here was a Judith Marquette Krause. She died too early. I mean, she died of tuberculosis. But when they had started to excavate AI, that's the stick figure she put up there, there was these big stones there. It was like 28 feet high. And she wanted people to know that. Before she died, she had 80 to 100 men in about 3 seasons. They wanted to know what was on there. That's on the west side of AI. And they found that was a place where the entrance has a gate, and the entrance indeed was an idea of a great gate that was there. And where was the king of Ai thrown to? That gate. And they put up a great pile of stones. They saw the gate of the city. It's on the west side of Ai. And there's when the debate, do you have the right Ai? They said, yeah, we do. Because the Bible is a historical document too. And they haven't been able to disprove it. They just ignore it or cover up the evidence. And I want us to understand that when we hear those things, well, the Bible is not accurate. Well, it's still being tested. And that's an important thing. Here's the gate that they found. After they dug up all those stones, they began to uncover there was a gate there. And maybe all those heap of stones was there because they did that. Next time, Lord willing, we'll deal with question number 14, lesson 3, and continue on. Thank you.